partially clothed body was frozen solid in a crouched position when police prized open the freezer about 5 o'clock last night.
For 18 months, I've been investigating one of Australia's most sensational crimes.
Detectives have been questioning a young man who was found in possession of the car.
Did David Szach really kill his lover, criminal barrister Derrance Stevenson, and seal his body in the freezer? Or is this case, as David claims, a gross miscarriage of justice?
I did not kill Derrance Stevenson. I played no part whatsoever in his murder.
As my investigation concludes, I go behind bars to confront one of Australia's most depraved killers, Bevan Spencer von Einem. Don't let him into your world, dressed blandly, with little makeup. Just reminding me of Clarice Starling and Silence of the Lambs. Half a world away, the hunt for the man originally charged with being an accessory after the fact, Gino Gambardella.
Hello.
Hello, Gino.
Yeah.
And stunning revelations as Chris Illingsworth restages the crime scene.
At some point, the offender manages to get a blow in.
To reveal the truth of who killed Derrance Stevenson. He wanted you out. He wanted you on that bloody bus to Cooper Pedy, and you thought, I'm having none of this. They say dead men don't tell tales, but Derrance seems to have things to say. Because as Chris continues to meticulously comb through the evidence, she's discovered something remarkable. Chris, we've got photos here of Derrance Stevenson in the freezer. What do you see when you look at these photos?
Well, this photo in particular is very interesting. This photo of Derrance in the freezer. And from what I can see here, there's lividity. And lividity is the settling of the blood after the heart stops and the circulation stops. So gravity takes over and the liquid blood settles where gravity sends it to. So in this case, Derrance is head down, left side down into the freezer, but there's lividity on his right-hand side and down his lower back, which doesn't quite make sense from a gravity perspective. That tells me that the position in the freezer is not the exact position in which the lividity fixed.
So what does this mean?
Lividity takes 2 to 4 hours to start to manifest. Derrance has been in a different position for probably around 2 to 4 hours, and then the body has been moved into the freezer.
What time did you get back to the house that night?
About 8:15.
And what did you do then?
Checked the bedroom, Derrance wasn't about, and that was it.
So what does that say, what David Szach tells us about going back to the house and Derrance wasn't there?
Well, this tells me that there's a time issue involved, and if Derrance was alive after the Gino phone call around 6 p.m, he's not moved into the freezer until around 2 to 4 hours later.
So in a nutshell, it actually means that David returns to the house. He tells us that. And he had to have been present when that body was put in the freezer. But that's extraordinary. It's contrary to everything that people who are pro-David Szach have said for years and years, and contrary to what David says.
That's what that lividity and that photograph suggests to me.
Chris's insight is dynamite. Derrance's body lay for hours undisturbed, more than likely on the bed, where police also found a massive pool of congealed blood on the upturned mattress. It fits with the theory that David returned to the house not to check on Derrance, but to bring help to lug the body into the freezer and to clean up that mess. But I still need to get to the heart of Derrance Stevenson's connection to the family and to Bevan Spencer von Einem. can put this to Von Arnhem himself, as his friend Paul has delivered on his promise to arrange a prison visit.
Today, got an opportunity to see Von Arnhem for the first time. His friend Paul says he hasn't had a visitor for 7 years. Oh, it's a message from Chris. Oh, hell, she's warning me what to... Oh, hell. As soon as you walk in the room, the person will be assessing everything about you, looking for your strengths and your weaknesses. Psychopaths do that. So you need to impress him with your knowledge, your organisation, how you talk to him, have your phone switched off. Don't be scatty or flustered, even if you can't remember anything. Know the details of the relevant case, dates, times, places, names, connections between people, court results. God, just reminding me of Clarice Starling and Silence of the Lambs. Don't let your emotional guard down. Don't let him into your world. Dress blandly, with little makeup. Give him nothing to be distracted by. No jewellery. Okay, so take no jewellery off. Lastly, stay in control of yourself, how you're interviewing him, and of the situation.
I'm not allowed to take a camera in, no notes. Absolutely nothing at all to connect me to the outside. I also don't want to draw any unnecessary attention to myself outside the prison, so we're filming with a discreet handheld GoPro. If I do get inside without issue, I'll be the first journalist to speak with Von Arnhem in 30 years. If they ask me why I'm here, I'm going to tell them the truth, that I'm actually here just visiting Von Arnhem. They've never asked me on any form, am I a journalist, so I haven't lied. I've used my real name going in, which is Deborah, D-E-B-R-A, as opposed to my working name, which is D-E-B-I. I have one very special question I want to ask this killer. For years, the police tried to get him to admit that his 15-year-old victim, Richard Kelvin, was wearing a dog collar when he was abducted. Richard was just fooling around with it. It's a small but important detail the police really fixated on, which would prove Von Arnhem was stalking the boy.
Oh, I'm feeling really nervous. I'm really close and my stomach's tumbling like a cement mixer. Out of here.
I was with Von Arnhem for 45 minutes, and it was one of the most intense interviews I've ever conducted.
He was so charming and just exactly as Paul described him, you know, tall, really charming, you know, lovely to see you, absolutely thrilled to see you. I asked him a question about Richard Kelvin, and I clearly got under his skin. And suddenly this charming man who, you know, wanted to tell me everything, I saw this completely different person, this black psychopath came out. I thought for one horrible second, I thought, God, he's going to strangle me.
Why are you asking me these questions? What do you actually want? This is not what I expected. And I said, no, it's okay, you can calm down. I asked him about the dog collar, and he clearly told the police that Richard Kelvin wasn't wearing a dog collar, and he told me, I said, did you see him with the dog collar? He said, yes. So he's made an admission. I actually feel like crying. It's just, I asked him the names. St. Dennis died of AIDS years ago. He was one of his best friends. He confirmed, yes, he knew these people. I asked him about the family. Were you part of the family? No. Denied. He's doing what all psychopaths do. He's going to take his secrets to the grave. Von Arnhem also denied knowing Derrance Stevenson or Gino Gambardella. No surprises there. Jess has left no stone unturned looking for any sign of Gino Gambardella or his relatives on social media.
Exciting.
I found mention in a newspaper article of the family that Gino stayed with in Italy when he arrived. And so I found his nephew on Facebook.
You're kidding.
No.
How long's it been since anyone has made any contact with Gambardella that we can tell?
Yeah, so Channel 7 tracked him down in 1989, and that's the last trace of him.
Gambardella jumped bail in Adelaide on a minor sex charge 10 years ago and travelled to southern Italy with his 2 children, Louisa and David.
And then I think I might have found his son living in the UK.
You're kidding, Jess.
So all of this, though, makes me think that we need to get to one of the family members to get to Gino, because I can't find a trace of him.
From one city of churches to another, this is Molfetta in southern Italy. Such are the twists and turns of this investigation, it's taken me all the way from the sleepy suburban streets of Adelaide to the Adriatic coast. It's so gorgeous here. 12th century cathedrals, bustling piazzas, and towering spires that lean in to almost kiss each other. I've come here because this is where Gino Gambardella fled to in 1980. And it's also where he gave his last TV interview 30 years ago.
Gambardella is demanding the state government and police act to clear the air over unsubstantiated press reports that have linked him to the gang of homosexual killers, the family, and the 1979 murder of Adelaide lawyer Derrance Stevenson.
There was nothing between me and Stevenson whatsoever. We were just very good friends.
Gino's nephew works as a teacher not far from here. And if I've any chance of meeting him, it means an early start.
I'm sitting outside a school near Molfetta, where Gino's nephew works. I don't know where he lives, which is why I have to come to his workplace. I know what he looks like, because Jess found him on social media. I'm hoping that his nephew can put me in touch with Gino's son, David, and most importantly, the elusive Gino Gambardella himself. The problem is, it's really tricky. It's a school, we can't take cameras onto the grounds. We have to be as discreet as possible here. Otherwise, we could be moved off by the local police. Okay. It's really important that I meet him face to face so he can see the whites of my eyes and see that he can trust me. The stakes are incredibly high. It's a long way to come if I end up with nothing. Yes, that's him.
It's him. It's him. It was. Yeah, she said it's him.
Yes, Vic, it's Debbie. Come from Australia.
Oh, hi.
So I'm an investigative journo. We're doing a documentary. Most importantly, I need to talk to your Uncle Gino because he knows the people. Where is he?
I can't tell you that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Could you have a chat to me and we can,
Yes.
and I'll tell you what it's about. There is absolutely nothing wrong. I have come all this
How
way
did you know who I was?
because your face is on Facebook.
Yeah.
What a gorgeous man. He was so surprised to see me. Wanted to know, of course, why I'd come all the way from Australia, what we were doing. I told him, but guess what? He's given me David's number and he's contacting Gino and asking him to call me. The bad news is, though, that Gino is not in Italy. In fact, he's not even in Europe. He's on another continent. As much as Gino's nephew was incredibly helpful, he did ask that I not reveal his identity nor the location of the school. But thankfully, Gino's son David, who's in London, is willing to talk to me.
Hello?
Hello, is that David?
Speaking.
Hello, David. It's Debi Marshall calling. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right.
First of all, I can't really get a handle on your father. What sort of man is he? What's he like?
My father was a immoral man. I don't think he was a particularly good father. Would I give my father a reference? No.
Do you think it's possible that your father was involved in the murder of Derrance Stevenson?
Okay. I personally don't believe so. I don't think my father would have that sort of cold-blooded behaviour.
What about in terms of being an accessory after the fact and helping to put Derrance Stevenson's body in the freezer? And I'm sorry to be so blunt with you, David, about your father.
No, I think that's probably worse than shooting because you're dealing with a corpse and disposing of a body.
David, did you read that your father was, his name was linked to the abductions of hundreds of young men, offering them up to the elite of Adelaide, lawyers, you know, people in the judiciary?
Like on a circle of high-profile people, yes.
Not just that, but also filming them in compromising positions, you know, pornographic movies. And one of the people he was working with was Derrance Stevenson. So do you think that is possible, David?
Absolutely. Would my father participate in something that involves having sexual contact with young teenagers? Definitely, yes.
Your mother described Gino as a monster. Do you think that's a fair description?
You know, I definitely would be. A monster is a very heavy word, but I don't view my father positively, and I will be more supportive towards my mum than my father.
Wow. Sorry. Poor man. That's awful. Sorry. Oh, amazing. Just, you know, how amazing that he's so honest.
Gino has agreed to talk on the condition that he calls me on a landline so that his number can't be traced. The closest landline I can find is in this church across the road from our hotel. So the priest has given me his office to use the phone, which is sort of strangely ironic, really. It feels sort of like I'm in the confessional and about to talk to Gino Gambardella about things from 4 decades ago that he may want to confess to me about. Gino said he'll ring at 5 o'clock, and on the dot, we're on. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Gino.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks very much for calling me. I appreciate it.
Well, I do keep my promises.
I'm being filmed this end, and obviously we'll be broadcasting not all of what you say, but we're recording what you're saying as well.
It's very important, I tell you.
No,
my family has suffered
I've suffered a lot, my family already.
Sure.
Yeah.
Derrance didn't deserve what happened to him, did he? Do you miss him?
Of course I miss him, of course. He was a person who I could talk to and trust him.
Gino, were you in love with David Szach or Derrance Stevenson?
No, I said no, never.
David told me that the day you met him, that you took him back to Derrance Stevenson's house and you were with another young man in the car.
No.
That's not right.
No, that's a lie.
Gino, was it normal for you to take young men to Derrance's house?
I went there, we had to wait a sauna. The sex could not happen. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. But you know, that's a very delicate issue. And if they're consenting, why not?
What about pornographic movies? Were they made?
No, never seen that. Never seen it at all.
You never saw a pornographic movie?
No, never. We never took one. I never took one. I never seen one. Absolutely not. Absolutely.
What sort of relationship do you now have with your adult children?
Excellent relationship. I have my daughter. We have in contact, and my son as well. And
so he's got the greatest respect for you. Is that correct?
Well, I think so. I don't have any problems with him.
Okay, good. Can we turn now to your ex-wife, please, Mary?
Yeah.
Obviously, Gino, we can't just dismiss the fact that Mary described you as a monster in the Sunday Mail. She said that you procured boys for other men at the rate of one per week.
How would she know this? How would she know?
I don't know how she knew this. So I'm just asking you, is it true?
If I did this, I wouldn't have done it in front of her, would I?
She says that you knew people in high places. You delivered young men to them for a fee.
So, look, as she's lying with this, she's lying with all the other things.
I want to go, if we can, please, Gino, to the night of the murder. You called Derrance that night and you spoke for a while. What were you talking about?
Well, it was my wife's birthday, so I invited him to a ram-up place for 50 drinks, 50 cakes, and he was supposed to come. He didn't turn up. And so then I think I took the car and went to his house. I parked the car on the right-hand side there, and I knocked on the door a few times, but he didn't answer.
So you went to look for him, you got out of the car, you knocked on the door, he didn't answer the door, and you left. What Gino has just let slip is astounding. He told the police that he just drove past Derrance's house that night.
No car, no Derrance, I just took off.
Now he's contradicted himself, admitting he was at the door. Do you think that David murdered Derrance Stevenson on his own?
No, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there when David was there killing him or whatever, was there killing him. I wasn't there. How do I know?
Now, you were charged as being an accessory after the fact in his murder. You've told me that that you were at his house that night, that you went and knocked on the door. Actually, that, however, was contrary to what you told the police. You said it was a no car, no Derrance scenario. I didn't stop. So what you've told me is contrary. Hello? Hello? I think he's hung up. Must have hit a sore spot. That man couldn't lie straight in bed. It's really interesting what he said about his kids. He doesn't have a good relationship with his son at all. He knows a lot more about David Szach. He knows a lot more about Derrance Stevenson's nefarious activities. And the mere fact that he hung up on me in the end, when I pointed out to him that he's given me contrary evidence to what he gave the police regarding the night of the murder, he's panicked. Six months ago, we made an application to the Magistrates Court to overturn suppression orders on some of the alleged identities associated with the Von Einem case. What do you want to see happen?
I'm at that point now, nearly 40 years later. I want to be able to say, these people, you did this to these boys. Because only one person's been convicted of him, only one. And there's a lot more involved.
Today we've had a fantastic win. The magistrate has agreed to lift some of those suppressions. That means for the first time in 3 decades, we can now name some of the people involved in the Von Arnhem case. Let's look at 2 of those names. One is a transsexual, Prudence Furman, the other, Louis Turter. At Von Arnhem's trial, there was evidence that he brought hitchhikers to the home of Louis Turter and abused them. Both also feature in Trevor Peters' secret diaries.
Prue said that Bevan Von Arnhem frequently took drugged young men there to have sex with them. She said that Louis would always have the bed made and candles ready.
Robin?
Yeah.
Hi. Robin Barnes's life changed forever when her brother was murdered by the family.
Unless these people are brought out into the open, this is never going to be solved. And that's not fair on us. What about us that are left behind picking up the pieces?
Lifting those suppression orders means we can finally deliver some justice decades after Alan's murder.
Good.
I've got some news for you.
Yeah.
We've been in court this morning and
Yeah.
we've had 5 of the names lifted, the suppressions.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, after all this time.
Yep.
Thank you. Well, you guys have just made my day. You really have.
I thought we would. I thought we would. Prudence Furman died in 2008, but Louis Turter is alive and well and living in Sydney, and he's a well-known identity in the Sydney gay scene. As monumental as it is to reveal some of those names in the Von Arnhem case, the DPP still have names of both perpetrators and key witnesses that should be exposed. One of the perpetrators is fiercely resisting our application, and for now, his name continues to be suppressed. But there are others who we can name, whose identities are not suppressed, who allegedly orbited around the perimeter of the family. One of them was a guy called Richard Brown. Guess what he did? He was a magistrate. Another is a convicted paedophile who served time in an Indonesian jail for molesting teenage boys. His name is Don Storen. I'm going back to visit someone who knew David Szach in prison. Mike, who's not his real name, was a rent boy and a street kid in Adelaide's parklands in the 70s. He's never spoken publicly before. You're still so frightened for the safety of your family that we can't identify you. Why is that?
Look, you have to understand. I was in Adelaide jail and they put me in a cell with the same person that needed to have a chat with me and told me to shut the fuck up. We may not be able to get to you, but we can get to your wife and kids.
So you met Don Storen. What happened that night with him?
I wouldn't really call it sex. You're more like a stiff board with someone having their way with you.
You were drugged, weren't you?
Yes, I've been drugged, more than one occasion though. I even remember the drink I had. It was called a Pimm's, and I had one drink and I was gone.
The drugging that Mike describes is similar in MO to the hundreds of other abductions committed by the family. Mike also knew the magistrate, Richard Brown.
For nearly 30 years, he was entrusted to hand down justice in our courts. Now Magistrate Richard Dutton Brown stands accused of one of the most heinous crimes. The 60-year-old is charged with 5 counts of indecently assaulting a male and 2 of unlawful sexual intercourse.
Tell me about Richard Brown.
He ended up having let's call it sexual relations with me. He arranged to pick me up, and he'd arranged to pick other boys up too. But it was like he'd book you, meet you here on, and he'd do nice things, take you out to dinner, and he'd treat you like he was your friend. He was just a sick, twisted fuck.
Richard Brown was also a known associate of Bevan Spencer Von Arnhem.
2 detectives came and asked if I could arrange for some surveillance on Von Einem. And Von Einem picked Brown up and took him down to the toilets. They spent a fair bit of time in the toilets, whether they were there to pick up people or not, I don't know.
Magistrate Brown was charged with sexually assaulting young boys between 1977 and 1981. Those charges were dropped 17 months before his death because the age of the alleged victims could not be proved.
And they say Bevan Spencer Von Einem was the only person that did it. Don't you believe that? Don't believe it. He wasn't the only person involved.
You were engaged to Richard Brown for a while.
Very briefly, very briefly. When you talk about the family murders, I think it was just a loose association of people, but a lot of very powerful people who were in high positions and were wealthy and could pay people to be quiet, to pick up young boys, and that's where we get Gambardella. He was the sweeper. He went around the streets picking up the young boys. That's where David met Derrance. He was picked up by Gambardella.
Home deliveries, that's what these boys were. These pedophile elites, they couldn't afford to be seen playing with underage boys, so they had them home delivered to them. Just like takeaway food.
Jessa spent hours in the bowels of the Adelaide Supreme Court reading hundreds of pages of trial transcripts, and she's unearthed some incredible material.
Jess, welcome back. You've been buried down there in the court transcripts for weeks, it seems. What have you found?
So, Alan Barnes worked as a delivery driver, restocking vending machines, and one of his customers was Von Einem. And Von Einem was regularly in contact with these delivery boys. I came across a transcript as well in which a witness says that he was at a hotel where Von Einem offered Alan Barnes and himself drugs, anything he wanted, if he could bring boys similar age to Von Einem and his cohort.
Von Einem's everywhere, he never misses a chance, does he?
Then we have Darko Castellan.
Who's he?
So he's a mate of Alan Barnes.
Mm-hmm.
He's also the last person to see Alan Barnes alive.
Okay.
Darko Castellan works in Gino Gambardella's chiropractic clinic. Now, another witness says that Alan Barnes, Darko Castellan, and Gino Gambardella went for a drive, and he admitted to accidentally being involved in Alan Barnes' death. Now, that is something that Darko has always denied.
That actually places Alan Barnes squarely in Von Einem's camp and Darko Castellan's and Gino Gambardella's, which would mean that Derrance Stevenson was involved at some level as well because he was Gino Gambardella's best mate.
So do you remember Joe?
I went with Gambardella and Gambardella had a young friend with him. Yeah, by the name of Joe.
Joe, who was in bed with Derrance Stevenson and David Szach and Gino Gambardella?
Yep. Exactly.
What about Joe? What was his real name?
I always understood that was his name.
What was his surname?
I wouldn't know. He was European.
From prison, David Szach wrote a letter to a PI in which he reveals that Joe is Darko Castellan.
You're kidding.
No.
When David said that he didn't know who Joe was, he was lying. He did know who... He had to have known.
Yeah.
If Joe is Darko Castellan, then David Szach had a much closer relationship with Gino Gambardella than he would like us to believe.
Okay. Do you remember the story about Mark Smith, who was David Szach's best mate when he was younger, and he visited him in prison? David Szach said to him, after he asked, "Did you do it, mate?" He said,
"If they find this other boy, it'll put a completely different light on the case or the story."
that other boy was Alan Barnes, who turned up under a bridge 2 weeks later. Where's Derrance Stevenson in all of this?
Well, I'd put him here, Deb.
Right at the heart of all of it.
Yeah.
So Derrance Stevenson knows Gino Gambardella. Gino Gambardella knows Joe. Joe is Darko Castellan. David Szach knows Darko Castellan. Darko Castellan knows Alan Barnes. Who knows Von Einem? I'd say the circle's complete there, Jess. Well done. How could they not have known each other in a small place like Adelaide? There is no doubt in my mind now that Derrance Stevenson was involved in some really murky business and that he knew key members of the family. But I don't believe that that resulted directly in his murder. So is David really the fall guy and his case a gross miscarriage of justice, as he claims? Or has he been pulling the wool over everyone's eyes for 40 years? The answer lies in the hundreds of pages of trial transcripts, forensics and crime scene photos, which Chris Illingsworth has now pieced together to recreate the crime scene.
This matter here is very interesting.
And to restage what happened on the night of the murder. Here we are.
Again.
We're now at the end of our investigation. This is it. Today. This is it. I've got a problem.
Tell me.
So many pieces of your story aren't adding up.
Okay.
I cannot put the jigsaw together.
Okay, well, I'll try and fill in the blanks as best I can.
I need your help.
Yep.
To clear up the inconsistencies, but most of all, David, I need you to tell me the truth.
Okay, that's what we've been doing.
Are we on?
Yep, we're on.
I just want you to have a look at this young man here. Who's that, David?
That's me.
That's you.
But I don't know when it was taken.
It was taken before Derrance's murder.
Yeah.
What do you see there?
I can't really even identify myself. I look so haggard or whatever the word is. I certainly look off sorts.
Okay. To me, you look like a haunted,
Yeah.
don't mean to be rude here, but somewhat scruffy.
Yeah.
You're looking at that camera like it's your enemy. This is not the face of an 18-year-old who's a happy young man. You had a lot going on. So how did you get money from Derrance?
Well, I didn't think I ever had to do anything. Derrance was always there to be helpful.
Hairdresser Roger Shepherd.
Yes.
Did you ever meet him?
Yes.
How many times?
Roger Shepherd. No.
We found Roger Shepherd and we spoke to him. I'm going to show you something, David, if I can, what he said in our interview.
And I said he's a damn nuisance. So I thought this carpet business would keep him out of my sight. Yeah, he said I'm sick to death of him.
No, I've never met that person, so I really can't comment.
Derrance met with Roger Shepherd.
Yeah.
Just weeks before the murder.
Okay.
And that's what he told him.
But I don't find that to be particularly troubling, given that people are inclined to say all sorts of things for all sorts of reasons.
This is what troubles me a little about your narrative, for want of a better word, because a lot of people have said all sorts of things, and they said it at the trial, and they all contradict your version of events, but you stand firmly to your version of events. Right?
You can't have it both ways.
No, we can't. The other critical thing about David's case is timing, especially how long it took him to drive from Adelaide to Port Wakefield. Believe the witness, David drove a distance of 99 kilometres in just 40 minutes, placing him at the crime scene for hours longer than he says. What time do you say you arrived in Port Wakefield that night in 1979?
Certainly before 10 p.m.
And what time did the service station attendant say you got here?
Just after midnight.
But actually, you could have made that trip to Port Wakefield if you had picked up Derrance Stevenson's car and gone like a bat out of hell through to Port Wakefield. You could have been there by 12:15 when Maida and his colleague said they saw you there.
Come on, you're going through all these little country towns. It's not like it is now, just a straight, highway.
Okay, but David, what I'm saying...
I'm saying a person isn't going to commit murder and then put themselves in a situation where they're drawing an extreme level of attention to themselves, driving a red car at a tremendously high speed to get from Adelaide to Port Wakefield in, 40 minutes? It's just not going to happen.
Okay. Mark Smith.
Yeah.
Your friend Mark Smith.
Yep.
How long's it been since you've seen him?
Oh, years. Has to be 40 years, 39 years, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a very long time.
So we found Mark.
Oh, good.
And I'd just like to show you what he said.
Dad got a call one night, in the night. David was trying to break in. I don't know what for. But I just remember Dad, when he came home, he said it was terrible. It was, Derrance chasing David around the car, screaming like a couple of women, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And so, not a nice experience for my father.
What was he looking for?
I've no idea. No idea.
Yeah, it's just something that happened that I wasn't breaking in or anything. I was around that area.
You were what?
I was around that area.
Oh, come on, David. You're really testing my patience.
There was no evidence of me breaking in, as Mark said. I was just seeing if there was something I could steal or something.
See if there was something you could steal?
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly wasn't trying to break into the building. I don't really know. I can't even explain. Perhaps I was just angry about the fact that he was constantly on about this relationship with Derrance.
Billy was angry and upset because of your relationship with Derrance, perhaps, so that's why you decided you might try to steal from him.
Well, I think I wanted to just do some damage, would be closer to the truth.
You wanted what, sorry?
Just to do some damage. Well, break some windows or whatever. But certainly
that's
to cause
violence.
Certainly to cause him inconvenience.
Not just cause damage and inconvenience. This is not the meek and mild David Szach that you've presented to be. Jess, can we go back to where I was, please? Sorry. You're doing really well.
I need a break.
Yeah. OK. David, like a break. We'll just do a break call on that. Ever since I began this investigation, I've been convinced that David has been loose with the truth. Now I've finally caught him out. The question is, why? And what else is he hiding? OK, David, we went to Italy. To find Gino Gambardella.
Did you find him?
We did find him.
And was he talking? Was he talking about anything, or how was his reaction to you sort of approaching him?
That's an interesting question.
Well, I don't know. I'm just.
Could you just play that clip, please, from Gino, what he said to me in Italy?
Now, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there with David when David was killing or whatever. Was killing him. I wasn't there. I don't know.
He's hard to understand, isn't he? He says, now, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there when David was killing him, or whatever, was killing him. I wasn't there because I was at the door now.
That's the first I've heard of this being at the door. He's saying something totally different at this point.
David, look, I think it's about now that we start to try to get to the point about what actually happened the night of Derrance's murder. Because let's face it, that's what we're here for, isn't it? Do you concede that Derrance Stevenson was murdered in 40-minute space between 6 and 6:40 p.m?
No.
You don't concede that?
No, we concede that it was after 8:45.
Let's tick these off, will we? We'll just go through one by one. He didn't take you to the bus depot, did he?
No.
He didn't go to Gino's wife's birthday celebration, did he?
No.
He didn't call Gino to say that he wouldn't be there, did he?
No.
He didn't do anything that night, did he, David?
Well, from what we can gather, he certainly didn't.
He didn't do anything that night, David, because he was dead. He says he sleeps till 2:40, which is the time that Derrance gets home. And they have tea and fruitcake. Okay, I just want to talk to you about the sultana cake. What time did he finish eating that cake, roughly?
3:15, sometime around there. I don't know. No,
Okay,
no.
so around 3:30. So what we know from the post-mortem remnants of the cake that were found in his stomach, a light meal takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to be fully digested. This means that Derrance was killed within 2 hours of eating the cake. That would put his death at 6 o'clock.
Okay, but he's on the phone at 6 o'clock to Gambardella.
He's on the phone at 6 o'clock. So his murder must have occurred very shortly afterwards. By your own admission, you were still in the house at that time because you hadn't left to go to the bus depot. Okay, David, we've had a criminal profiler look at this case.
Okay.
She's read the post-mortem report. She's read every scrap of evidence. She's seen all our interviews with you and other people. She's read the court transcripts.
It's a lot of reading.
She's a police detective.
Yes.
And an FBI-trained criminal profiler. She's no slouch.
Okay.
So what I'm going to take you through now is what the criminal profiler said, okay? This is what she thinks happened, David.
Okay, okay.
You're Derrance getting changed in the bedroom, and then the phone rings. It's Gino Gambardella ringing.
Derrance was on the phone to someone. You went in the bedroom. You grabbed the Ruger off the gun rack and you started loading it.
But this is a tricky thing to do. There's no magazine in this firearm. During the course of that loading, one round drops underneath there, an unused round, and it's left there, it gets missed.
But there was a problem.
What? What was the problem?
Derrance came back into the room, surprising you.
Derrance comes in and is confronted by an armed offender. You make a lunge for it.
No, because he was shot from the rear, so you're saying that he's approaching from the front.
Now we're in a struggle in this tight corner with the firearm. At some point, the offender manages to get a blow in.
You managed to land a blow on Derrance's face?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Why not?
Well, because I'm not inclined to physically hurt anyone.
When he fell briefly to the floor, he spat out some blood, which is why there is blood on the bottom part of Derrance's mattress.
This is the first I'm hearing about this.
And so what happens next is, I believe, Derrance would have stood up somewhat, and then there's still another struggle with the gun, and Derrance is fighting for his life, and now he gets pushed backwards onto the bed.
You overpowered Derrance. You're the younger, stronger, fitter man, and you shoved him backwards onto the bed. Now, why did you do that? Because he had had enough of you. You had become a professional embarrassment to him, a personal liability. You were costing him a fortune. He wanted you out. He wanted you on that bloody bus to Coober Pedy, and you thought, I'm having none of this. None of this.
Which then presents the back of your head to me.
When his back was to you and the back of his head exposed, you took your chances, picked up the Ruger, and you shot him.
And that's a perfect shot there. And I shoot, and you spend several minutes unconscious, bleeding out, before you're actually deceased.
She said you shot him from behind and then you watched him die.
No.
We know Derrance was killed between 6 and 6:40.
We don't know that.
The science supports that time frame indisputably. It had to be earlier than 6:40 p.m. because a witness saw you coming out. After the bus depot, you go back to Green Hill Road to continue tidying up the crime scene. But then Gino arrives at the house. How do we know Gino arrives at the house? Because we went to... Well, you do know, because we went to Italy and I asked him and he's told me that he went to that house. Why would Gino Gambardella want to go to that house? Because there was something in that hole that Derrance Stevenson had under the cement that was extremely incriminating. We know that he was a slime bucket. We know that he went all around Adelaide picking up young boys and they were delivered into Derrance's loving arms and you were one of them. And you poor little bugger, just by the way, were only 15 when you came across this.
Well, I appreciate the fact that Derrance certainly shielded me and kept me apart from all this sort of bad stuff. Apparently you're saying that...
Oh, he was part of the bad stuff.
Well, he wasn't sharing the bad stuff with me.
He did not protect you. He was a pedophile, let's use the word. Derrance Stevenson was a pedophile in a high-placed position. I have no doubt he was a nice bloke, he was highly educated, but that didn't stop him being a man who carried out dreadful activities with Gino Gambardella. And, you know, it was pubescent rape. This is what we're talking about, statutory rape that went on for years with him. And I suspect, and I think that you suspect, that he was somehow involved with the family, the so-called family, which is how Alan Barnes got caught up and why he was the first murder victim, because he was at the house that night. And we did a reconstruct of carrying the body. It's damn heavy. You had help in your endeavours to pick up that body, to put him in the freezer. The freezer had to be pulled away from the wall, which is how we got your fingerprint marks, to allow the lid to be opened up fully before Derrance could be tipped unceremoniously into it.
They've lifted him up and basically managed to spear him down head first.
Terrible way for a man to die, really, isn't it?
Why do you think...
Frozen goods were then stuffed back on top of him to add to the indignity.
Why would you go to that effort?
So overall, what this thing adds up to is an altered crime scene, a staged crime scene. And the radio's been left on as well, which was something that Derrance used to do if he went away.
So they knew his habits?
That's right. Somebody knew the habits, they knew Derrance. This is not a stranger crime.
What do you do then? You put super glue. Seal the lid with super glue to prevent the decomposition odour from escaping the freezer. So I think it's time that we cut to the chase.
You approach this on whatever basis.
I approach this on the basis of the truth. The jigsaw's falling into place now, isn't it? It's all getting pretty tight and it's not a nice little web at all. And you're in the middle of it. You and Derrance Stevenson and Gambardella and Darko Castellan and Alan Barnes and Bevan Spencer von Einem, you know, and then later, you know, 5 boys who were murdered by the family. So please stop sitting there and telling me that you're as innocent as the day is born, because I don't believe it anymore.
And I don't lie very well.
You have lied to me all the way through on certain matters. Even today, you've lied to me on certain matters.
For what reason have I apparently lied?
I've done what I said I would do. I've chased every rabbit down every burrow. I'm bitterly disappointed. Bitterly disappointed.
Not half as what I am. I'm just saying, you just add to the overall complexity of this.
I wish that we'd had a different ending for you, David.
Well, that's your ending, it's not my ending. No. We'll leave it on that basis.
He must be exhausted. Tough, Jess. It was tough. It's really hard to call a man a killer, you know. And he's so hard to read. But he lied. He lied through the interview. Has he lied for 40 years? Yes, in my opinion. What can we do, Jess? This is what we do. We're journalists. We go in and We look and we find and we say it, you know. But it doesn't make us feel any better. I feel wretched.
Yeah. I feel a bit emotional about
yeah, you made me cry. Oh, that was tough.
Yeah.
That was tough. Despite our findings, David's conviction could still be overturned because of Dr. Manock's original flawed forensic evidence. And if that happens, Derrance's murder, for all intents and purposes, will become an unsolved case. And there are still so many questions I have about the other people like Gino Gambardella, Darko Castellan, and all the other people whose names are suppressed by the courts. From my own partner's murder, I know just how important it is that victims of violent crime get justice. So imagine how it is for the families of those 4 young men whose murders are still unsolved. And despite our success in getting some suppression orders lifted, key suspects are still walking the streets, their identities protected by the law. The same names that keep coming up time and time again. They've been hanging around for decades, and these people are so determined to keep their reputations intact. It's time this state had a decent inquiry or even a royal commission to drag these cases out of the darkness and into the light. It's long, long overdue. And what about all the other victims who survived? The hundreds of other boys swept from the streets into the arms of Derrance Stevenson and the family. It's something that Gino Gambardella's son David wants to address.
Hello.
Hi, David. Debi Marshall. How are you?
Yeah.
Good to see your face.
Yeah. Good morning. Nice to see you.
You're obviously very concerned, David, about not just the victims, but also about the slur on the Gambardella name.
Yes, absolutely. We are in no way, shape or form supporting, involved or somehow showing sympathy for my father's or any of these people's behaviour. We are completely estranged from this sort of circle of people.
What would you say to his victims, David?
Well, I'm truly sorry and express my sympathy to all the victims that have suffered physical, emotional traumas. I'm really, truly sorry. And for me, speaking up today is a gesture towards all the victims who want some answers and want some justice today.